Our next guests are going to be tackling the role of data in real-time marketing and enterprise growth, and they're going to explore data's role in transforming businesses, and they'll share some insights from some case studies of companies who are successfully leveraging data gravity beyond marketing. And so please welcome Daniel Newman, founding partner and principal analyst of Futurum Research, along with Koz Ota, founder and CEO of Treasure Data. Daniel and Koz, welcome. It is so great to have you both joining us today. I'm going to rejoin you shortly, but I want to hand things off to you for some intros.
Hey, thanks for the introduction, Matt, or for bringing me on. I'll try to keep this really brief. Futurum Research, we spend our time analyzing the markets, the technology, and the secular trends that are changing the way we interact, both in B2B and consumer spaces. I'm a regular contributor on places like Forbes, MarketWatch, CNBC, Bloomberg, and I'm a 7-time best-selling author. And I'm really excited to have this conversation about data, CDPs, and Kaz, it's always great to see you. So I'll turn it over to you.
Great to see you. Yeah, thank you. This is Kaz. I'm a CEO and co-founder of Treasure Data. And for those who doesn't know, Treasure Data is a company providing CDP, customer data platform. We have the #1 penetration to Forbes Global 2000 or G2K. And there's like 150 plus CDP vendors in the market or categories, but we specifically focus on the enterprise, which is very unique. So we focus on enabling marketing organization who has presence in like multiple countries and multiple brands on multiple regulations. So those are the sweet spot customer for us. And then, I'm honored to talk with you, Daniel, today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to ask you straight away about the company, and you gave a little bit of the background about, the clients and who you serve, but you've had an interesting journey, recently returning as CEO of the company, founding the company. I would love to just take a couple of minutes and have you share a little bit about the journey, because we've seen the CDP space explode over the past couple of years, but you were in this and you were thinking about this and you were doing this, before it was getting the attention it was getting today. So, share a little bit, talk about the journey, talk about why you're back at the helm and why you think this whole data gravity concept is so critical.
Yeah, sure. Let me share some of the story, which is interesting. And we started company 10 years ago. My background is HPC, high performance computing. I was interested in building the world's fastest supercomputer when I was a student. And my professor just built the world's fastest last year in Japan. So I'm very proud of it. And, when we started the company, my vision was I want to democratize the use of data or the power of data. Because 10 years ago, using the data takes time, takes human resources, and also it's just difficult setting up and analyzing the data. So my simple bet is okay, why don't we move the data analytics infrastructure into the cloud so people can immediately use, don't have to hire a lot of people, and then it's a subscription model, right? So since then, we're seeing the explosion of customer data. So while we provide general data analytics platform, the #1 use case was analyzing the data. And around 2016 or 17, we decided to call ourselves as a CDP and focus more on the marketing side. Right now, we're operating at scale. We're storing more than 70 billion profiles in total. 100 billion profiles are getting activated to hundreds of marketing and sales technology platforms and processing 6 quadrillion records processed per month. It's like 6,000 trillions of records we're processing per month. And it's just an astonishing amount of data coming in.
Yeah, that was a fascinating number, 6 quadrillion. We all talk about the acceleration of data and the fact that volumes are growing exponentially, and for every marketer and basically every company that's trying to really maximize their data, that is the biggest challenge. It's like you can never really keep up.
Yeah, of course. And then changing the topic a little bit, Daniel, what's your perception of data's importance to enterprise growth? What types of technologies or approaches are getting critical recently?
Well, first of all, as you just alluded to with this, the numbers that you shared, I mean, my perception is that data is both exponential and persistent, and it's an ever-changing landscape for businesses. there's these two different buckets. There's the systems of record data, which companies have historically been pretty good at operating within, although there's still plenty of room for improvement there. And then there's this mass of unstructured data that is coming, and you're talking about trends like edge and IoT. You're talking about social media. You're talking about just content, a lot of user generated content from across the web. And this data especially for marketers is so critical because it seems if you look at the trends and you look at some of the trend lines, we went from a society where knowing about our customers took a ton of commitment to collect data through very intimate and interpersonal interactions, whether that's a transaction data, whether that's shopper data that was collected, CRM data that's been input by salespeople, to essentially having the ability to kind of sit back and let the users start to create this data and say, hey, this is who we are, this is what we like, this is where we eat, this is where I travel, this is where we go. And then what happened was, the world took this on, loved it, and started doing it with so much momentum that the technologies that we had just simply weren't good enough. Every interaction, how are we tracking it, collecting it, better understanding it? And then you talked about it. How are we processing, ingesting all that data, building algorithms that can understand what's happening? Because it's not like you can sit there. You can't just put all this in a spreadsheet and be like, oh, here's every customer we need to call tomorrow.
No way.
So you've got database challenges, data management challenges. I love, the application of AI. So you talk about like and not just AI, because that's kind of a catch-all for what I would consider to be like applied analytics and high value data analytics, machine learning, setting up neural networks. But this is going to be critically important when you start talking about things like quadrillions of records, petabytes of data, billions of profiles. The ability to improve ingestion rates, automate processing of data, build algorithms to be able to determine next best actions. I mean, these are the approaches in my mind that are critical. And when you look at this, Kaz, I think it's really all about how do you do this at scale? So, the big data problem, I still remember like a decade ago writing about the big data problem, and then 8 years ago wwriting about the big data problem, then 6 years ago. And the problem hasn't changed, Kaz. It really hasn't changed because we get better systems. Our compute power gets we get more compute power. The cloud has enabled certain amounts of things. But then as all these improvements in tech have come up, we've had exponential growth in data that only makes things harder. It's kind of, the parallel, it's kind of like with hackers. Every time we get a better security ring or fence around our technology, they just come up with new creative ways to phish and to botnet attacks. And it's the same thing for marketers. Every time you think you've turned the corner, and I think we'll talk more about this later, but even the migration to cookieless. So all these things, I think are really important trends. And I've got a couple more questions for you, but I'd love to hear weighing in, what other trends, just on the question you just asked me, are there any other trends that you think I should have added to that list?
Yeah, so we're actually riding on two waves in terms of CDP, right? So one is consumers' behavior is becoming more digital, right? And then I also want to talk about the privacy and regulation side too. So first of all, we're seeing around like a 7 to 8% of GDP is in digital. So it's like a 10x more to go, which is like fantastic opportunity for us. And then CDP will become more and more important as the people's behavior becomes more digital, because data is the only way to understand the customer and serve the customer better, right? And on the regulation side, we're seeing GDPR, CCPA, and then more countries are trying to implement those. And I think, we were talking about big data for 10 years. There's a little bit of trend, which is we collect everything and we use the data, whatever. So that age is now sort of becoming to the end, meaning you have to collect the data with the right consent, and then you have to use the data based on that consent, right? So I think, using massive amount of data is one thing, but having the trust from the customer by having the right consent and merging these together is becoming much more important, and I think that trend will continue to.
Yeah, and I think we're going to come back and talk even a little more about that before this session ends here. I want to pivot though, kind of throw a question back your way, and that's about platforms. So you talked a little bit, even when you were alluding to like regulatory and all that stuff. Well, platforms have kind of both achieved relentless utilization and popularity in the markets, but at the same time, they're under great scrutiny because of the way they tie users in. But in your world, I mean, you're legitimately building a platform, customer data platform. Talk about your approach to platform and why it's not just another marketing automation or CX or marketing tool, but why it's really a platform that you're trying to build out.
Yeah, so I think in the CDP industry, I'd say all of the CDP vendor focus just on the marketing, right? So syndicating profiles into the advertisement for lower CAC, customer acquisition cost, and then doing personalized website, personalized email. But I always believe the power of data is not just for the marketing. Especially if I'm a consumer, I would like to have better service after the purchase too, right? So once I come back, I created this vision called Beyond Marketing, and that's sort of the vision I'm driving as a company. And then we actually released a new product line, which is CDP for Service. And I'm also a consumer too. So when is the last time you had the best experience by calling to the contact center? I can't remember, and I want to change it, right? So this product line actually makes the contact center agent to utilize customer data to better serve, let's say, VIP customer for a better routing. And then you can also fix the problem quickly because the data about the product usage and product gets integrated in real time. And also you can better recommend the next product so that you can turn the contact center from cost center to revenue center. We're also releasing the CDP for sales so that the salespeople can use customer data to do the better clienteling in the brick and mortar. This can be applied into B2B where you need like a complex sales process, thousands of SKUs. And my approach is just the beginning, right? So I'm actually making the treasure data's underlying layer as the fundamental data platform. And then I am in the process of building more applications on top of it to unlock the power of customer data. And then over time, for the future, I would like to have a lot of third-party vendors and ISPs coming into our platform, and then they have the ability to unlock hundreds of our customers' customer data into various channels and then the world too, right? So we're seeing the opportunity for like better logistics for a lot of companies, right? I have never thought about it, but apparently the logistics is, in a lot of cases determined by the human mind rather than the number. So if you're capturing customer data and then demand side, you can actually optimize on the supply side. And then it's a huge problem. And then, over time, right now we focus on marketing. That will be the main use case for sure. But I think, we can make the impact like the trillions of dollars of impact for the human world. And then that's something we're going ahead.
Yeah, I love the sort of hub and spoke. We've seen this with the cloud work very, very well, but it's sort of about a set of what would be kind of your standard services, compute, storage, networking, and then now you're seeing services. It's the same thing with you kind of having a core service and then having extensibility to a number of different services, making it very consumption driven and making it very easy for people who build around your base platform to expand into these different services. And also, I see a lot of value in a vertical focus where, hey, we do this for automotive, we do this for the contact center, we do this for consumer packaged goods, because I think there's a lot of standards. And then, of course, leaving just a little bit of room for developers to make things precise for an individual business. Right.
I think, we're getting to the scale where, okay, we can operate like at scale, like processing like a quadrillions of records. But at the same time, investment into security is also very critical and then huge too, right? So I think those investment, third party or application on top of it can leverage it. And that's, I think, the power of platform where you can unlock so many things by writing the application on top of the platform. And we would like to have become the critical data platform in the age of digital customer. And that's where we're going.
A new CDP, Kaz.
Yeah.
Critical data platform, CDP.
Yeah. Love it. Next tagline. Okay, so let's change the gear a little bit. We talked about, privacy and then, cookie too, right? So with the potential cookieless world and then privacy changes, how do you see the importance of first-party data to the enterprise?
Well, we've sort of gone full circle. You alluded to this, I alluded to this, but there was a time, like I said, where companies did this because they had to. They couldn't get access to really personal customer behaviors and data unless those customers chose to interact with the brands. And then the advent of the internet, and specifically Web 2 with social media and so much user-generated content, we actually started to volunteer. We did it in two ways. We did it through our own user-generated content, and also through the privacy agreements that we agreed to with all these different companies to participate. They always say when the service is free, you're the product. Well, what happened was companies got a little lazy, and they're like, oh, I don't need to really create great experiences and opt people in because I can track user behavior with cookies. I can use retargeting with Facebook or with Google, and I can build these really comprehensive profiles of people, and then I can target them without even needing really their permission. And then obviously in different parts of the world, in places like Australia and Europe, the rules got much tougher. In Canada, the US has been lagging a little bit, but we're seeing in California that there's been some specific acts to protect privacy there. And we're seeing the regulatory environment turn. I mean, the events of Facebook over the past several weeks, what's happened in democracy. This has started to really raise some alarms of all the debate about Section 230. And I don't want to make this political, but the thing about it is influence is influence. It doesn't matter if you're influencing someone to stay at a certain hotel, to buy a certain vehicle, or to vote for a certain candidate. The opportunity to engage a customer, there needs to be more on-ramps and off-ramps is what I truly believe needs to happen. And so what I think is companies are going to actually have to come full circle again when these laws continue to be enacted and put into place, and start to force customers to engage through taking every part of the data that they volunteer and making sure you're building that next best experience to get them to opt one more layer in. Kind of like the smart forms. Remember, you'd give them one line, and then the next time you'd download a paper, they'd ask, the first time they ask for your name, the second time they ask for your address, the third time they ask for your number. You need to kind of check a box each time to continually prove that you're committed and interested and that they're worthy of your data. Now, I'm not saying that this is even going to be governed by our own behavior, Kaz. I think it's going to be governed by regulatory, but at some point, I think consumers are going to realize we've given up a lot in terms of our privacy for experiences that we think are great, but that really do leave a lot to be desired.
Also, the tricky part is we see some countries, we're passing regulatory laws, but the perception from the consumer, they don't allow certain behaviors or targeting to, right? So that's why this is complex. And also some of the regulation, there's so much gray areas, what we can do and we cannot. So we live in this world where, regulatory changes, consumer privacy perception changes. So it's a very interesting and dynamic era for sure.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for CDPs, because obviously part of what you do leverages all that easy, accessible data that companies have either bought or continue to invest in. But part of it too is using all that data they have now to create better, more targeted experiences that get these people to come back on the ramp and get them with consent in the right way. So we only have about 2 minutes till Q&A. And so let's just do a fire. I'm going to fire it at you and you fire it at me. Give me end of the year, your best 2022 prediction related to customer data, personalized experiences.
Yeah, so first of all, in the industry wise, we have 150 and expanding, but I'd say next year will be more like a consolidation. So we're seeing like a small to mid-tier CDP companies getting acquired, and they're trying to merge too, right? So I think the consolidation will be the keyword in the next year. And then it's just the same trend. I think people will become more digital, and then more privacy regulations, and there's more interesting technology got born in the market and in sales, and so we just need to ride that wave. How about you, Daniel?
Yeah, I actually think, and this is kind of tying together some secular trends, but I think the continued supply chain shortage is actually going to lead to a lot of consumer-facing companies to developing more
That's true.
loyalty and opt-in programs. Amazon Prime sort of set the tone here. And I don't know if you guys saw this, but with the shortage, Best Buy has now released and launched a opt-in program that you pay about $200 a year to get first access to new and hard to get products. I think there's going to be more, technologies, because if you think about what we just talked about with opting in and such, I mean, what a great way to figure out who your most loyal customers are and who your most solvent customers are in terms of financially, because they're willing to pay just to have the opportunity to buy stuff. And so, as competition for e-tail goes up and supplies remain low, I could see more of this being used both as a creative marketing tactic as well as a way to, raise revenues.
I see. Okay, well, Daniel, this was an exciting opportunity to talk with you, and also the audience. Thank you very much for the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe our moderator is going to come back to moderate some Q&A.
I am indeed, although you guys don't even need me. What a great job. Terrific conversation. Thank you for that. All right, a couple questions. I'm going to ask this first one to both of you. Maybe Kaz, you can start us off.
Okay.
Can you actually balance growth and privacy as it relates to customer data? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so we can definitely, I think the privacy and the regulation will be the first priority for sure, because it's just a trust with your brand and then customer, right? So a lot of a customer, to be honest, come to implement CDP to get the privacy and regulations law get passed, right? So that will be the first motivation for a lot of, our customers. They're moving on to marketing. So those are the trend we're seeing.
Daniel?
Yeah, I'd actually say even if you don't think you can, you have to. The bottom line is this isn't like a choice anymore. We've had a luxury for almost a decade and a half now since social media's advent that companies could be somewhat lethargic in a lot of their handling, especially if you're in a non-highly regulated industry with how you collect data, how you reach out to people. Some of the companies that have been whacked with GDPR fines are seeing this is no joke. These are very large numbers, and it could be a very significant pain. And trust is it's a limited resource. Once you break trust with a customer, it's very hard to get them back. So, trust starts with those interactions. Like, hey, why are you reaching out to me? How'd you find me? Like, people feel like I said, only when it's that perfect offer do we not care about giving up our data, but everything else is an irritation. And a lot of marketers haven't figured out yet that you're not actually building a relationship. You're just irritating the consumers and actually you're hurting the brand. So we have to find this balance, and the technology is going to be the only way we're going to solve this problem.
Yeah. I think
it's a great answer and a great segue to a question I have for Kaz. So Kaz, I think there's obviously an understanding that a CDP is particularly useful to the marketing personnel, right? But can you talk about how it can really be used across an enterprise and interdepartmentally to drive growth?
Yeah, sure. Like I mentioned, we just released a product called CDP for Service, which specifically focuses on a contact center. So if the scenario is, okay, I'm a VIP status for the particular brand, and then if I call, they should know our phone number because I've been interacting with this brand for 10 years. And then by using this product, you can route the VIP customer into the different queues so that you can have a shorter waiting time, first of all. So that's dynamic routing. And then the next, I have some problem for the product, et cetera, and et cetera. With CDP, you can integrate all of the customer data, plus potentially IoT product type of data coming into the CDP. And then you can expose the data into contact center agents so that they can solve the problem much more quicker and faster, right? And then finally, we're also seeing the trend where contact center is becoming revenue generation center. Let's say if I looked at the product a day before, then the contact center agent, okay, thanks for contacting, and then thank you for being a loyal customer for 10 years. By the way, here's the coupon or offer for you, and then you can make the relevant offer for the customer at that time, right? So that's a contact center context. We're also seeing more use of customer data in the sales department. We're getting some interaction about logistics I mentioned. So I think the possibility is like infinite here.
Daniel, as an analyst, what do you see as potential barriers to number one, getting unified customer data across a whole organization, but number two, to get buy-in across a whole company to make decisions based on this data?
Yeah, so you're really talking about a combination of a technical problem and a strategic problem. From a technology standpoint, getting your systems in place to be able to ingest all that data, manage all that data, organize it, garner the right insights, and putting the right insights in front of the right executives are a massive series of challenges. And there's so much technology out there. So weighing between all the different options is another challenge that companies need to face. There's full stacks. There's companies that are kind of saying, hey, we're building this top to bottom infrastructure. We've got the platforms, we've got the software and the applications. You can do it all with us. And there's this best of breed approach. And it's not a right answer. There's a lot of different companies that can meet your needs. So really careful vetting of the technology is one really important time. And it needs to be done collaboratively between technology, the business, the finance side, and then of course, sales and marketing. These three groups, at the very least, these three groups need to work together very, very well. The other part you're really talking about, Matt, is culture. You're talking about the culture of a company. Companies with strong cultures will be able to implement and act effectively on all this technology. There's an old stat about IT projects, something like 50% of IT projects fail. And I always say 50% of technology is not bad. And the companies building these technologies, whether it's Treasure Data or a Microsoft or IBM or Salesforce, they're all building very capable technologies. They have some of the best minds in the world that are developing the software, manufacturing, deploying, testing. The problem is the company, the people. I mean, I've written 7 books on this topic. And when I go through case studies, it's almost always a reticence within the culture of the organization to deploy new technology. You look at something, Matt, like automation right now, right? And there's large swaths of the population, they don't want automation. Even if it's not automation right now that is going to displace their job, they're not dumb and they see the path. Like, oh, well, right now you might be replacing a process in our ERP system that's going to help, go from 7 screens to 2 screens to get an invoice out. But what's going to stop them from eventually writing articles for me or, having some AI person doing our podcast? And they see this evolution. And so even if it's a very subtle subliminal reluctance, that reluctance at scale slows down the deployment of new technologies and new investments throughout an organization. So the stronger the culture, the more you're able to fight through that. But that's a lot easier said than done, Matt.
Sure. No, but I think those are great insights. Kaz, let's wrap this session, if you could, with just 1 or 2 very brief success stories of customers you've seen really get this right, that you've worked with and partnered with, who have success stories to share.
Yeah, so we have a customer like Subaru who collects, I think, 800 million consumer behaviors in interactions every single day. And then we've helped them apply machine learning to really, really predict who is going to buy the car. And then we count. So if someone comes to the dealership, we can accurately predict based on the digital behavior, who is more likely to going to buy the car or less likely, so that the salesperson can actually convert them better, right? And then I can't disclose the exact number, but that's like hundreds of millions of dollars worth of ROI. So it's very simple. More data, apply machine learning, and then you can better predict who is going to buy the particular product.
Very, very cool, and it's scary for me as a potential car buyer in the next few weeks.
Yeah,
but good to know.
That's why trust is important, right? So having the right consent, right data, with having the trust. So I think that also ties back to our previous topic too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, Kaz, Daniel, can't thank you both enough. You covered a ton of ground. This was really, really insightful. We greatly appreciate your time. Kaz, don't go far. We're going to bring you back in a bit. Daniel, thank you for your time, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thank you for having me.